In this episode of the Clarity Digital Pod, I sat down with Beth VanStory, a seasoned marketing strategist and founder of Veritech Group, to dive deep into the evolving world of fractional CMOs and fractional CSOs, Chief Sales Officers. Beth brings decades of experience from leading new media at the Weather Channel to launching OfficeDepot.com and more recently, helping mid-market companies build scalable go-to-market strategies. Let's get into it. All right, let's go. Hi, Beth. How you doing today?
I'm good. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday to you too. I appreciate you accepting my invitation to talk to you about this whole fractional CMO and what was the other time you used CSO positions and phenomena that's happening for the last few years. I think more and more companies are hiring fractional CMOs. But before we get into that, if you don't mind introducing yourself for our audience.
Sure. I'm Beth VanStory, and I'm a managing partner and founder with Veritech Group. We are a consulting firm focused on sales and marketing and go-to-market, helping clients grow faster. Before that, I've been working as a fractional CMO for a number of years, both on my own and through another firm. And some of the companies that I worked for prior to going into consulting that you might have heard of, I ran new media for the Weather Channel, and I also launched and led OfficeDepot.com.
Oh, wow.
And after that, in between, I also worked for a couple startups in the automotive space. So really passionate about marketing. I love consumer a little more than business. I tend to do more consumer, but I've done both and excited to just be here and talk to you about the whole world of fractional CMOs and CSOs.
Yeah, it's really good stuff. I have a little bit of exposure to the automotive too, but on the tech side, more like working with technology providers to automotive. I remember I used to, on my programming days, I used to code those contract forms, those long 553 contract forms for car dealers. It was really pain in the neck. And it had to like line up and dot matrix printers. They don't do that anymore. This is like over 2.5 decades ago. And then after that, I switched over to marketing. I just want to mention that. Cool and good stuff. I appreciate you again coming in. But let's just talk about fractional CMO and CSO. CSO is short for sales officer.
Chief Sales Officer.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'll also see fractional CRO, Chief Revenue Officer, and sometimes that's a combo of sales and marketing.
Yeah, I see that happening a lot more in a digital marketing. We use CRO for conversion rate optimization. And I was at a B2B conference and we were in a CMO room, a meeting room, and a lot of people were introducing themselves as CRO. That was the first time I heard it. I'm like, what is CRO? And then they're like, they said it was a combination of sales and marketing. And that happens a lot more on B2B side, I believe, than a B2C. Is that correct?
I think it depends. Sometimes you'll see it in the e-commerce world as well. And really, I think a lot of people use it to distinguish when you have that profit and loss responsibility, as opposed to just the marketing, which tends to be on the expense side, and just the sales, which is on the revenue delivery side.
Yeah, good stuff. So let's just talk about why there's a need for fractional CSOs and CMOs. Maybe you want to speak about CMOs first. Why do we need fractional CMOs?
Sure. There's a number of occasions where a company might hire fractional CM. So sometimes the seat is empty. Someone's out on maternity or paternity leave. Sometimes the CMO has left and they know that it's going to take them 6 or 8 months to get someone in the seat and get them up to speed. So they want someone who's experienced, can hit the ground running, can manage the team, and just for continuity, keep things going. On the sales side, a lot of times they're just not hitting their revenue numbers and they're lacking that sales leadership. They've got some reps, but they don't have the right processes in place. They don't have the right tracking in place. And then sometimes they just don't have that senior level, either on sales or marketing, that truly understands strategy. And what I mean by that is sometimes you might see a marketing director and their idea of strategy is we're going to do SEO, or we're going to double down on social, or we're going to do whatever is the flavor of the month, hot topic in marketing. And what a CMO who has the strategy chops is going to do is really figure out who is the customer. So they're going to develop an ideal customer profile. So in the B2B world, that ideal customer profile is really what companies are you going after? What size, what industry, what do they look like? And then you've got the personas of who's actually doing the buying, who are the influencers, who are the decision makers. And then doing the analysis on the market to say, what are the market trends that are happening? How do we stack up against the competition? Where can we find the white space that we can really own? And then how do we put together our messaging strategy to establish that white space and establish our ownership of that white space? And then how does that play out through all the execution and all the channels?
That was great response. And I attest that I had worked when I was in house, I worked with CMOs that they were great leaders, they were great with people, but they didn't understand the whole marketing funnel journey, whatever you want to call it. And
Right.
and I sometimes had to step in to that fractional CMO role because I'm the IQ guy. They were pretty smart too. They were the EQ people. They were the people that knew how to manage teams and do the interdepartmental, if that's a word, collaborations, cross department. That's probably a better word, collaborations. And I was helping them with the go-to-market strategies and personas, research, audits, SEO
Mhm.
audits, things like that. And I remember I was telling one of my bosses, Charlie, I'm like, he's a really great leader. I'm like, I'm not getting paid enough for this. You hired me to be like the director of digital marketing, and I'm doing a lot more. We need help.
Yeah.
So I'm glad, and this is many years ago. I'm glad that there is an awareness about fractional CMO, and many seasoned CMOs, such as yourself and marketing leaders, are pushing themselves into that role because I'm assuming that's your preferred way of doing things nowadays as opposed to because of your experience. Is that so? I guess my question to you is that why would a really good CMO want to be a fractional CMO as opposed to having a full-time job that's stable?
Yeah, I'm not sure everyone does prefer it. One of the reasons that people prefer it is just the variety that you get,
Hmm.
flexibility that you get, and the opportunity versus maybe doing other types of consulting where you're doing a project or something like that. Really, you still have that seat at the table, but you
Hmm.
don't get involved necessarily in all of the politics and things in the
Yeah.
company. And I also find that sometimes companies they like having that outside thinker. Not every company needs a CMO. So a lot of times we'll go in, my colleagues and I will go in and we will figure out, we'll do the research, figure out the insights, we'll establish the strategy, we'll get going on the execution. But then there comes a point where they don't really need that CMO level person. What they need is a marketing director to do all the execution going forward. The challenge, I will say, one of the challenges in the fractional world is that everybody and their 15 cousins have hung their shingle and called themselves a fractional CMO. And many of them really aren't CMOs, and
Yes.
they're not equipped to do some of the strategic work that a true CMO is going to do. So the waters have gotten a little bit muddied there.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And I think that's part of the problem where just CMO role in general has such a short tenure is because the role isn't well defined. I don't think there's on a CTO side, like you cannot be a CIO and CTO without actually being able to do some of the technical work yourself. I've never seen, at least the companies I work for, most of the CTOs and CIOs were either former programmers or former network administration that they elevated the ranks to that position. But on the sales and marketing, there's no proper education, there's no proper academia that kind of like certification at least. I know there are some companies like CMO Alliance are trying to do that. But I think that's part of the issues where, like you said, people just self position themselves as a fractional CMO. And I have worked with some, and some of them are really good, and some of them they're more of a digital marketer,
Right.
not CMOs. And I totally percent agree with you. And is that the same way on the sales side? For life, I haven't been able to figure out like who's like the full responsibility of sales, especially on B2B side. The sales versus marketing gray
Yeah.
spot is really gray in every organization.
Yeah. And ideally, there's a seamless handoff, right? The
Mhm.
marketing is going to drive leads. You're going to get to a marketing qualified lead. And then sales is going to look at that and they're going to make an assessment and decide, is this a sales qualified lead? And should we begin to work on our sales process? Or do we disqualify them and move on to the next one? And so, a lot of times when someone's looking to hire the marketing lead, they're looking for someone who can drive more leads. A lot of it's about demand generation. How do
Yeah.
you get more qualified leads, get the right leads into sales? The reason a lot of people will bring on a fractional CSO is they may have those sales reps, but they really don't have things organized well. They don't have the right organization. They don't have the right training. And a lot of times they don't have the right system. So they haven't figured out the compensation system and program. They might not have the right sales automation system, CRM, to be able to track the leads through different stages, or maybe it's just not set up well. You could have HubSpot or Salesforce, and that's great. But if it's not set up to support the sales process that really is best in class for your company, your industry, then it's really not helping you. And sometimes people just think, oh, we got this technology, we're ready to go. It's, oh, we launched a website. But if no one knows about it, it doesn't really help you to convert at all. So those are some of the challenges. So a lot of times a CSO will come in and they'll probably help with some of the larger sales, but it's really about getting the organization, the infrastructure, the compensation, the systems, getting everything in place, getting those sales reps trained and upskilled, and just getting a clean process and tracking in place so they know what's working, what's not working.
I am so glad you mentioned this because we work with a startup, a SaaS, enterprise SaaS startup
Mm-hmm.
for 2 years. They recently went away. And while I don't like losing business, I was a little bit relieved. And here's why. They didn't have any of that stuff figured out. We kept driving in marketing qualified leads and things weren't working out. I also think they had a major product problem. The product audience was way too narrow. And I can briefly mention it was just like with a certain part of not even the entire manufacturing, certain manufacturing clients. And I, having been in the manufacturing space and having done marketing manufacturing space, I just felt like the product was awfully limited in terms of audience, and also there was no lead nurturing going on there. There was none of that, and there was too much pressure on the marketing. And they kept bringing new. We were obviously the agency. They kept bringing new head of marketing, new CMO, and those people would just recreate the website, merge the website, redesign the website, and I was just like, I had to go with the flow as a consultant. I just as an agency, and we didn't have a lot of say other than whenever they ask. And one time I just voluntarily said, I'm like, you know what, we've gone through 3 website redesigns, we've gone through
Yeah.
a bunch of SEO on LinkedIn versus programmatic campaigns. Nothing seems to be working. Maybe we have a product and sales problem. And obviously they didn't listen to me. But I'm glad you mentioned that, because seeing a lot of CRMs that are underutilized just
Oh, yeah,
because no one is they don't have that strategy in place, and
exactly.
that's and that the amount of investments that companies put. HubSpot enterprise level is expensive. Salesforce is super expensive, and it's very complicated to implement. So yeah, 100%. That's very clear now. So where is it all going these days with AI? Do you have any opinion of how AI is going to help, or maybe get in the way, or maybe assist fractional CMOs and CSOs?
We're still very in the very early days. So, of
Mhm.
course, a lot of people are using it for content generation. And the problem is a lot of people aren't using it wisely. I just saw
Yeah.
something today posted by a former colleague, and it was so clear that it was AI generated. They hadn't even edited it to edit out the 3 asterisks before and after the AI content. So it was like,
Yeah.
whoo. But I think it's going to get a lot stronger on the sales side, actually, in terms of helping you do things like lead scoring and also data augmentation. If you've got a few fields of data about a contact, but you need to append more data
Mhm.
and more behavioral data out of some of the systems. For example, HubSpot has a new offering called Breeze, which is their AI platform, and they're building on it all the time.
Yeah.
And there's people that are really becoming adept at how do you use Breeze to leverage HubSpot and make it stronger. So I think we're going to see sales, marketing. Certainly, people are using it even to create ads, not just for content, website content and articles and things like that, but even for advertising, using it for creating images. But right now, it still feels a little bit like the Wild West out there. So it's going to be interesting to see how it rationalizes over the next few years, because there's also so many companies playing in the space with a lot of promises. But I think some of it remains to be seen about, okay, how are we going to use it wisely and how are we going to ensure accuracy? And certainly with writing, what I found is I would never just post something that I created out of AI. The language is very
robotic.
It's robotic. It's not the way I would say things. It doesn't have the tone that I would want and things like that. But it's pretty powerful as a research tool. That's what I love. You can go in and get answers. I saw a video yesterday. This woman took the BBB and loaded the whole thing into ChatGPT and asked it what it thought of the bill and what it meant. And it was pretty interesting. We won't go politically here, but just that's an example of something that you can do is load in something. And even in some of the forms of, I know ChatGPT, you could load things in that you've written and have it write in your style and your tone.
Yeah, that's exactly. I've custom GPTs just for that, where I'm like, hey, this is a blog post that I've written. I want the tone to be like that. But even then, I still have to, when it produces content, I still have to edit it quite a bit. Really good stuff. I appreciate it. Chatbots is another tool, AI tool that I've seen that helps sales quite a bit.
Yes, and they're getting better, but a chatbot is really only as good as the AI behind it and the programming behind it. And ultimately, what I would say is that ultimately you need to be able to get to a human.
Yes, I agree.
Because there's a lot of questions that just can't anticipate every question right now. And I've gotten in loops in chatbots that were so frustrating and I could never get the answer that I needed. And so being able to get to a human
that's what I put, human, customer service rep, human. I keep saying it because the moment I detect the chatbot is AI.
It's not that different than the IVRs, right? The interactive voice response, where you're just like agent, operator. You keep saying words till you get the one that triggers in that system and will potentially get you to a human. But then there's companies that won't even let you have a human. If you're on the lowest version of HubSpot, you're not going to get to have any kind of conversation by phone. The best you're going to get is chat and email. But I will say I had an issue recently because we were setting up HubSpot and took it as far as we could go with chat. But the person was brilliant at their follow-up. They escalated it to the tech people. That was on a Sunday or Friday. I don't know. I think it was Friday. And by Monday at 11 a.m., they had fixed the problem and emailed me. And it was pretty impressive customer service, even though I would rather have solved it on Friday with someone live. It was still pretty good. And that's just another thing that's going on in the world, right? Is the tiered service levels that you can get. I wanted to go back and just touch on something that you said, because one of the things you asked me is what's the occasion that someone needs a fractional? And some of the things when I'm networking with people, I say, if you hear someone say, we've spent all this money on SEO and PPC and it hasn't moved the mark. We've redone our website and it's not helping our business. So that's a good time. That's when I want to have a conversation with them. Say, you should talk to my friend Beth. Just have a conversation with her. I'll do a 30-minute consultation with people anytime, because a CMO is going to ask the questions that start figuring out what might have gone wrong, because sometimes companies have done the right things. They just haven't done them the right way. And so an example would be if you have someone doing maybe pay-per-click or social, but they haven't really taken the time to do the discovery and the research to understand the customer and what are the customer's motivators, and therefore what language should you be using, maybe even what offers should you be putting out. So that's when a CMO can really add that value. As you were saying, like you were hired to do one thing, but then you came in and you really realized you needed to do some of that work. That's often what we hear from clients or prospects.
100%. A lot of times I like when we onboard clients, whether it's SEO, SEM, whatever, I like to see the work done already. Who's your ICP and a product market fit, tone of voice, and all that stuff. Those stuff aren't done. Obviously, we'll do them. We either introduce them to someone like you, or we pull fractional CMOs. We'll figure it out. But that's the type of, that just delays things quite a bit. And I tell most of my clients, especially startups, like try to have all that figured out. But too often they end up making a mistake. Oh, I'm going to go hire a head of marketing. What does that even mean? And head of marketing will try to be the Swiss Army knife who does a little bit of everything, doesn't do anything correctly. Another example was working with a CRM company for automotive. They're like, oh, we want to sell to car dealers. Who's your buying committee? Is it the owner? Is it the general manager? Is it like, you got to know those titles. What channels, mediums you're going to reach out to them? Are they on, because they're not, a lot of them may or may not be on LinkedIn. Like, I think LinkedIn is a very noisy place, right? I think you and I or somebody else were talking about it. It's like, you got to figure out which channels there are, all that good stuff. And I think makes a really strong case for fractional CMO or marketing strategists. Have a roadmap. It doesn't have to be like detailed, very tactical, but at least have some high level understanding. So then vendors like us can come in and plug things in and start doing their SEO, PPC, all that good stuff.
Yeah, I'll share 2 comments on that.
Please do.
First of all, in the automotive space, in the dealer world, you also have very different types of dealers. You have independent dealers, you have buy here, pay here dealers, you have groups, small groups, and then you have the huge publicly held company groups. You have the brands, you have the manufacturers. So you have to know what are the entry points you're going to be able to get into. Are you going to try to start with shooting whales, fishing for whales, the really huge ones? Are you going to go after Chrysler, Jeep, or are you going to go after Ford? Or are you going to go after someone like a Penske? Or here we have a local company called Coons. It's a high level CMO and CSO. They're going to look at the market and understand how's the market organized. The other thing is, I might differ from you in that I'd like to see if they have some of their personas and things done, but I also know a lot of times they're not done.
Yes.
They're not validated. And we'll have someone say, oh, well, our customers tell us everything. But as a market researcher, and I do a lot of research, I'll tell you, they will never tell you as much as they will tell me when I position myself as an independent market researcher.
I see. That makes sense.
So being able, and also research really is a science, not, you have to know how to do research, how to put the person at ease, build that rapport, ask the right questions, and make sure you're not asking leading questions. So there's a lot of science to that as well. And there's always great ideas that come out of research. And a lot of times clients are surprised to hear what their customers say.
Yeah.
It can differ from what they think.
No, that was really good. And not leading them out, because I think that happens a lot of times with, did you hear about us online? Or what did you hear about us? Or was it Google? Like, sometimes I've seen that when I listen to call transcripts, that happens more often than it should. And then the customer just wants their product. Yeah, I find in Google.
And the other piece that you find out is the competition. They're not going to tell you that much about the competition probably, but they'll tell me.
I see.
So I can find out a lot, whether it's understanding what features of the competitors they like, or how they heard about the competitors, or what they like about the competitors, what they don't like. So a lot of times I'm doing that research, and competitive research can be voice of customer like that, where you're doing an interview and you're asking questions. You can also do quantitative research, and I'll do that sometimes. I'll do surveys and work with a panel company, and we'll find customers of the competitors. Sometimes we'll do customer surveys for my clients' customers. It's just a really important piece to start with, having those insights, because otherwise you're going to execute on a flawed strategy.
Really good, great insights. How do you do those surveys? Is it just an email outreach, or how do you reach out to customers?
Yeah, they usually get sent through email. Sometimes they're sent through the client's emails because they get a higher delivery rate that way. And sometimes we're sending them through a panel company. And sometimes I'm sending them through a survey platform like an Alchemy or Question Pro. I don't really use SurveyMonkey anymore, but I have. So typically by email. And then, because also if you send it through the system, through the research platform, then you know who's followed up, and you can send reminder emails and try to get your response rate up. And general practice, you want to have about 300 responses. That can be very hard to get in the B2B world. So you really work with the client up front. And I think that's another thing that to talk about is just when you go in as a fractional, how do you start off that engagement
Yeah.
to ensure success? And part of my first step is I have an onboarding kind of checklist. And our first call, I'll send that ahead of time. But there's a whole bunch of things that I'm going to want to get my hands on. I want to see if they have personas, if they have ideal customer profiles, if they have a strategy document, if they have competitive research, if they have customer research. I'm going to ask for a bunch of things in my kind of due diligence process, because that's going to help me get up to speed fast. I'm going to also ask them, how do you like to be communicated with? When you're the consultant, you need to work on the client's terms. So if they want to use Slack, then you got to use Slack. If they want you to have a company email, then you need to set up that company email, and you need to answer emails using that company email. And how do they want to be communicated with? Do they want to have a weekly call and a debrief? I will usually use a kind of tracking document as well. And each week we will go through, what was I working on? What have we gotten done? What issues do we need to discuss? And what's up next? Because I don't work on an hourly rate. I'm working on retainers. And with the retainer, you want to be very clear in your statement of work is what is the deliverable. So that client knows, here's what I'm going to get and here's what I'm going to pay for it.
Yeah. Question for you, and this is a pain point for me. Where do you balance up the project management, client handholding with actually doing the work? Because I think some clients, they don't have the project manager in-house, or they don't do a good job in it, and they're all over the place. And sometimes I get pulled in too much into like project management. How do you deal with that issue as a professional?
I'm coming in as that marketing lead.
Yeah.
So I'm going to make sure that project's on track. It doesn't mean I'm going to do all the deliverables. If they have people that they've said you will have access to these resources, then I'm going to have to act like their boss, like I'm in-house, and I'm going to manage those resources. That's where, again, when you have things like project management tools and tracking sheets, you're holding that accountability every single week. So you don't have a project go sideways.
Yeah, I want to give you an example. We have a very good client. I love them, but they're a little old school. There's emails all over the place. It just gets really, for me, just every email that comes from them, I've made a rule, like it just becomes a task, and then I have all these tasks from them, and I review them on every day or every other day and make sure, are they really tasks? No, then I put them in my project management tool, because they don't like to use my project management tool. And I found it to be quite a bit of work, unnecessary work. I wish that was part of what a fractional CMO would do. Is, hey, you guys got to use something like, I don't know, Monday.com or Jira, because this email, Slack, over communication can be counterproductive. Because here's where I'm leading on to. You could do all this work, come with all the strategies, but if the communication flow is broken, too often I've seen strategy decks like just being buried in their Google Drive, and and no one's looking at them, and they go back to their comfort zone. And I think, how do you change the in-house marketers and teams' attitude? Like, how do you get them out of the comfort zone? This is a new strategy, and this is a new way to execute. And I think that is something I personally need to grow as a consultant, to make sure that it's a balance of both technical knowledge and insight that I'm passing on to my client, as well as making sure it gets done in a timely manner, if that makes sense.
You can't force people to use tools.
Yeah.
So you can try to lead them to using new tools by showing them how it makes their life easier, but they still may not use them. I worked with someone recently where they just weren't going to learn how to use Google Drive, for example, which can make your life very easy. But again, I go back to, and some clients, I just use a spreadsheet because that's what they're comfortable with. I don't have to use Monday.com or anything like that, because I'm not worried about dependencies, but I'll have the specific deliverables from the statement of work. And usually they're grouped by things. And we'll start off with me showing when these things were designed when we intended to deliver them. So my statements of work are going to have a Gantt chart in them.
Yeah.
And then you're going to have who's accountable for them. So for example, I had a client where I would meet every Monday with the CEO and the CFO. And then I would meet later in the week, I don't remember what day, with the marketing team.
Yeah.
And with the marketing team, it was putting the monkey back on their back to say, okay, how are you guys going to track this stuff? Because each week we're going to go through this. So you need to figure out how you're going to track it. I don't care what system you use. If you want to use Asana or Monday or whatever, Trello, Basecamp, there's a zillion. Whatever you want to use, but you are responsible for tracking your work. But we're going to be reviewing it every week.
Yeah, I would very much love to see you can gray out the customer details for one of your SOWs, because I think I could use some help there personally, to be honest with you, but more than happy to pay for it. But let me ask you another question. How do you, and related to that, how do you, when you're talking, like you just mentioned, you talk to executives, CFOs, CEOs, and then you talk to practitioners or marketing teams, the KPIs, the tone of, what type of conversation you have at a C-level, what type of KPIs you're presenting to them versus the non-C-level? Is that part of the craft of being a fractional CMO? If someone wants to become a better fractional CMO, in other words, do they need to learn how to speak in different languages or different tones with different people?
They do. And I'll give you an example. When I was in-house with a company, I was paid, my bonus was going to be on revenue, margin, and SG&A as a percent of sales. So to the executive team, those were the numbers I was focused on. And there's a great saying in compensation: tell me how you're going to pay me, I'll tell you how I'm going to behave. So I was going to make those 3 numbers. Now with my team, whose bonuses also depended on those 3 numbers, I needed to take it down a level to things to show what they were working on. So if you think about an e-commerce business, revenue is a fairly easy calculation. It's how many sales did you make and how much were they?
Yeah.
But then you take it a level deeper. If it's e-commerce, how many people did you get to the website? How many converted? Which starts to get at, are you bringing the right people to the website? Then you start looking at how many are repeat customers, how many are new customers. You might have programs that are focused on acquisition for new customers. You might have programs that are focused on driving revenue from existing customers. Then you get to SG&A you get to margin, right? And so we were going to move to the lowest price zone of that the company had. So meeting our margin numbers was going to be difficult. So to meet our margin numbers, we had to share with everyone, here's the margin we need to hit. And by the way, the average margin across the company is this. We have to figure out how to sell higher margin products. So we had to put together marketing programs specifically targeting higher margin products so that we could get our bonuses, right? And then you have SG&A as a percent of sales. And really that comes down to watching your budget like a hawk.
Yeah.
So if you're going to end up being under on your revenue, you got to be under by a little more on your selling, general, and administrative expenses. So you're really managing in a retail company, especially if it's publicly held, you are managing to those quarterly numbers.
Yeah.
I don't know if that helps, but.
No, it does help. But let's just stay on that story, because how do you deliver bad news to executives? For example, this quarter we were down, we didn't meet our goals, or how do you tell that story? Because that is a challenge. I think what happens, a lot of CMOs, when they have to tell that story, they end up showing other type of data and KPI but our traffic is up, our revenue is down, but our traffic is up, or engagement on social media is up.
Yes, I would never do that.
Yeah. How do you deal with that? How would you deal with that?
Honestly and early.
Yeah.
That's the best answer. You have to own up to it.
And they're going to come back and say why. And then when you say why, you just stay very high level, right? You're like, competition increased, we didn't spend as much money on ads. You just tell them do you say at a high level? Do you get a little bit more into details, saying that, Google changed their algorithm and organic was our main channel and we lost a lot of.
If you're waiting for them to ask you why, you're cooked.
That's what I wanted to hear. So basically, be proactive. They should not.
Honestly, early, and do your research to figure out what happened and come with a plan of what you want to do differently next time. There's a lot of testing and refining in marketing. Not everything's going to work.
Yes.
But you need to know why you missed the numbers.
Proactiveness. I love that. Okay, we are getting to reaching the 40 minutes mark here. We have 4 more minutes. If you did I leave anything out? Would you like to add? Would you like to talk about anything else about this topic?
I guess that one thing I'll leave for people who are in the fractional world is a good fractional engagement isn't 2 or 3 months. It's where you get in, you start adding value, and you uncover other ways to add value. So I had a client that really was not where they needed to be from a financial analysis standpoint, because I had a finance degree undergraduate. I did a lot of analysis for them. I built a pro forma for them, even though they'd been around for over a decade and a half. And that led to me staying with them for 15 months.
Okay.
And so getting in and doing a great job, you start to see some of the other problems, especially if you have a seat at the table of those leadership meetings. And then that's a great way to be able to extend the engagement or bring in someone else, another resource that might be able to help them on something. Because sometimes I'm doing the strategy work and then I say, to really plan out your content, I recommend that you work with this guy because he's an SEO expert and he can help you create your content outline and your plan.
And that guy is me.
We've never worked together, but we'll have to do that.
Yeah, we have to do that. Yeah.
So,
I'm
not going to be the person that's going to do that. I'm not going to, as the CMO, you don't want me being the person going into Uber Suggest and going into Google Console and figuring out your search terms. That's not what a CMO does. Sure. But we'll help you find the right people. We'll manage the right people. A lot of times I'll even help negotiate for my client with people, make sure their statement of work is good. So
what would be a good title for me? Because I think I'm more of a CMO whisperer rather than a fractional CMO. Although on my LinkedIn, I'll put fractional.
I'll have to think about that.
Yeah, because I've done, like, literally, I'm the guy that you come to, Al, why is the traffic down? Why is the revenue down? What's going on with the SEO? Because I've done all of it for my 20 plus years of digital marketing. I can, if I don't know it on top of my head, I can get to the bottom of it. I can help you come up with the micro strategies that lead to your macro strategies. But I don't think there's a title for that.
One of my friends calls himself, he's a fractional CMO, and he calls himself the CEO whisperer. So maybe you are the CEO whisperer.
Yeah, maybe that's good. So let's conclude this with asking you a few personal questions, if you don't mind. When you're not working, what are you doing? What are some of your hobbies?
I love to travel. My latest trip was to Scotland. My next big trip is going to be to Japan next May with my daughter. Wow. And another thing I love doing with her is cooking. We both love to cook. We love to explore new food.
What's your favorite cuisine?
I can't pick a singular country, so I'll just pick a theme, which is Asian.
Okay.
It could be Thai, it could be sushi.
You can't go with Asian. You can't go wrong with Asian.
Vietnamese food, Burmese.
Oh, I love Vietnamese. Oh my God. It has a lot of vegetables in it, and I love it.
Yeah. Cambodian. Yeah. My daughter's of Cambodian descent.
Oh, okay. Very good. Very good. Yeah. Any specific meal you like?
I love sushi. I love sushi.
Yeah, I love sushi.
I love good sushi.
Good. Yeah.
I've had plenty of bad sushi, but
yeah, I don't go to those sushi deal places. It's when we go in sushi, we go to good places.
I live outside DC, Washington DC.
I love DC.
We have 9/10 of a mile from me. We have an amazing sushi place.
I love DC food scene. It's amazing stuff. I miss DC. California is very diverse too, but I think DC is probably more diverse. I guess the last question, this is a strange one. If you could be a superhero, which superhero would you be and why?
I would be Wonder Woman.
Wonder Woman. And
yeah, because she's a powerful woman.
Powerful. Okay. That says a lot. All right. Let's go back about where people can find you. And if you don't mind repeating, what are some of the specific services, any that you offer, any details you like to disclose, what type of clients you like to work with?
Sure. We're really focused on mid-market companies, 10 million and up in revenue. We don't really do startups or super small companies. And then again, the company is called Veritech Group, VERITAC Group. And that's our URL, veritechgroup.com. And you can reach me just at beth@veritechgroup.com. Again, I'm outside Washington, DC, but I have partners in Denver and Raleigh and LA. And we have a whole host of people that we work with on a 1099 basis that are specialists. But with our firm right now, we're the ones who are going to be running the engagements and be the point of contact with the clients, but we'll bring all the resources to bear that we need for a go-to-market. So might be you in some cases, Al, we'll see.
We'd love to. I love working with CMOs. Like I said, that's my preferred way of doing things because I don't have to worry about some of the things they do. So again, I appreciate it. I hope you have a great weekend, and thanks again for your time.
You're welcome. Thanks so much.
Goodbye.
Bye.